Marketing these days feels overwhelming. Many companies lurch between scattered marketing efforts with no clear path to take them from where they are to where they want to be. Yet in today's hyper-competitive market, marketing is no longer a nice to have. It's a need to have. To make marketing work, companies need simple marketing systems that help them stay consistent and stay on brand. I'm Jane Singer, and welcome back to A Seat at the Table. In each episode, we sit down with leaders, innovators, authors, and entrepreneurs so that we can learn best practices that will empower our businesses. Today, we're joined by the amazing Natalie Alves, founder of Nat Marie Design, a boutique branding and marketing studio in San Antonio, Texas, that helps founders and growing businesses develop doable marketing programs that reduce overwhelm. In this episode of A Seat at the Table, Nat will be discussing how to shift from being seen as a vendor to being seen as a strategic partner. The biggest gaps small businesses are missing when building trust online, and how small teams can stay consistent without marketing efforts taking over their lives. Please join me now in learning how to get our marketing back on track, hopefully the fast track. Thank you again for joining me here, Natalie. It's fabulous to have you. I think that what you talk about is something that's very relevant to a lot of people who are listening to this program.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Now, you talk about, obviously, about branding, which is something very near and dear to my heart. And I think that you address it from an interesting point of view, because you talk about it from the perspective, and correct me if I'm wrong, from someone who is running a you might call small to medium-sized business.
Yes, yeah, definitely. My background's in corporate, so I've had experience working on, huge corporate accounts. But as I went through my work experience and worked through different agencies, I really had a big heart for small to mid-sized businesses. I think there's so much of that storytelling that can come out, and I love getting to know the founders and having more of that personal relationship with my clients.
That's so important, because I think that nowadays we always say it's a very competitive market, and it's always a competitive market, but it feels like because the internet has sort of broken down any kind of barriers whatsoever. Whereas in the past, at least you had geographic boundaries, so to speak, but now really the entire world is everybody's market. You really have to stand out. And that's hard to do if you're a big brand with a big budget. But if you're a small brand and you really have limited resources, financial resources, human resources, it's difficult. I mean, you're really competing against everybody and anybody. I think that, the fact that you have sort of cracked the code on that is really important. Perhaps you share a little bit. I think, why don't we start with the fact that you talk about the importance, if you're a service provider, of being able to differentiate yourself from being a vendor as opposed to being a strategic partner. And then we'll unpack some of the other things.
Yeah, definitely. No, I think it's such an interesting time in the business world right now with social media. We have some advertising, free advertising in a way. And of course, like you mentioned, with being remote and working virtually, we're able to connect with so many people. But then there's so much noise, right? There's so many people out there doing what you're doing. We're able to see all of it. So it's hard to kind of narrow down. And I think something I'm really passionate about is bringing in more of that storytelling, more of that like kind of, key differentiators on who you are and what you're providing and what your niche is. And that's where I'm coming from more of a strategic partner than a vendor. If you're just throwing out your service line every time, you're going to blend in with everybody else. But if you have something special about your approach or how you work with people, that's really what is going to stand out. And I think at the end of the day, a lot of it is kind of this people to people human interaction phase. So that's how I like to position my business too. I really focus on what can I see that people are looking for from more of a relationship perspective? Because if they Google branding agency, they're going to come up with thousands and thousands of results. But if they really have that referral or word of mouth, or they come across my social media and they can see that there's more of kind of that kind of human connection behind it, then I can stand out. So think about that in your service business too. Everybody has something. We all bring something different to the table. So focus on more of that and what you can do to provide that and let it be the forefront of your marketing.
That's such an important point, and I think that it's particularly relevant nowadays because, in a
Hmm.
sense, automation has been with us in marketing for a long time now, and now with AI, it's even more so. And I love AI. I sit there and play with ChatGPT for more
Hmm.
hours than I care to admit. But at the same time, I think you're absolutely right. The differentiator is that human connection. It's the one thing that can't really be replaced or replicated by another company. That's the one thing that your business actually is personalized and can, in a sense, provide that personalized service. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. I think it's a story that needs to be told. Not that we don't like to automate the things that can be automated, but as you're saying, you need to have the story and you need to have the human connection that sort of catapults you out of that, sea of sameness, out of the masses in a sense, and creates that personality.
Exactly. I mean, I think AI is a great tool. I'm in it every day and learning more about it. I just talked to my team today about what we can do to use it for, photo resources and things like that. But I also have been seeing so much out there, and I'm a big advocate for you don't want your marketing to be so obviously chat GPT because then we're all going to be saying the same thing. Like there are ways that you can still use your AI, or there are ways that you can use an agency or some sort of marketing team to help you, but make sure you're putting the time in the due diligence into what you're putting out so that it has a human touch on it and so that it feels personal and you actually have a voice. I think that's so important now, and I think that's building trust. Historically, branding has always built trust, and a lot of that's been from the visual component side of it, like having a nice website set up, having a nice logo set up. And I think it's going to continue even more from more of that tonal messaging side of it too, where it's, oh, this person has a real voice and messaging system and not just like a chat GPT automated caption.
I think that's a really valid point because, yes, everything you can get ChatGPT to do is amazing, right? But at the same
Hmm.
time, you do run a risk that at a certain point, everything will become a lot more same, right? There'll be a lot more homogenization, sameness. That's going to make it very, very difficult for any company of any size to stand out if that's what they're really leaning into, without, as you're saying, creating that personal side of things, bringing some human touch in. I mean, one of the
Hmm.
things that we're working on within our company are what we call the customer success stories, which is where a company will have a customer talk about how they've used their product successfully and bring that human element in, not just this is what we do and this is why it's good, but as you're saying, tell that story of someone who's actually using it, how they're using it, what they liked about it. So, what you're saying really resonates with me.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's one of the beautiful parts of what I do with branding is It's it's like when you go to the grocery store and something pops out on shelf and you're like, "Oh my gosh, that's perfect for me." A lot of times that's the packaging, that's the messaging, that's the colors even. I mean, it goes down to even color theory and things like that. So what can you do in whatever your industry is and in your world where it feels like someone looks at it and they're like, "Oh, that was made for me," or they understand me. I always talk about, different examples where brands will bring in humor or they'll use different colors and fonts and kind of a stylized approach that connects with their specific target audience. Because that's the thing too, if you're just trying to talk to everybody, you're not going to niche down. You're not going to have this kind of specific messaging and branding tailored to your audience. So really think about the people who are shopping for your products or your services and build something that just hits home for them.
Yeah, I definitely think that's critical. And it takes a lot of thinking to do, which is probably why it helps to work with someone like yourself who you can brainstorm with, because when you're trying to do that on your own or even with your team, sometimes you can get caught in sort of like a thought loop, like an echo chamber. And you do need, right, an outside voice to be able to perhaps share perspective on that. So I think that's, yeah, it's an important thing to do, but it's not an easy thing to do. Now, you
Yes.
talk about the fact that branding is more than a logo, and honestly, that really needs to be said many, many times because a lot of people who are new to marketing think about it from a logo first, a design first point of view. And not to say that the design element isn't important, but I think that too many people get caught in that and they can't get out of that. They're focusing on, tweaking the color on this or changing the image. And they never really get to the heart of the marketing, the meat, so to speak. That you mentioned that there's gaps that you see for small businesses when they're trying to build trust online. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. So I think first, when you're building your brand, before you get into any visual components, what I do when I sit down with my clients, I'm like, tell me your dream. Like, really, tell me, where do you want your business to go? You want it to be future forward and future thinking, and that is my favorite thing in the world. I like to hear people's stories, where they come from, and then where they want to go and where they're heading, because all of that thought work, and I have plenty of prompts on it, all of that thought work really, in the simplest way, that's what's going to start to help you build your target audience and your messaging and the style that you want to go with because you're thinking about those things. So I think that's first and foremost the most important part. But then when you get into your logo, I always work on logos with full brand kits. So you want to make sure that you're building so much more than just this one logo. A lot of times I'll do a full logo family, so there's different versions of it. You have it in different colors, different formats, because your logo is really important. It's the face of your business and it's going to be used in so many different ways. So you need to have more than one version. But beyond that, I think people stop there, and you need to also have other assets that you're using. No matter what, any sort of marketing, any advertising, social media, website, you need more than just a logo for your visuals. If you only have a logo, but then you're using different fonts or you're using Canva templates all the time, you're not really falling into a brand. So I'll sit down and kind of build out a wish list with people. Do they need icons to go along with it? Do they need some templates? Do they need patterns? What sort of visual components make sense for them? And then I think common mistakes I see is that people are just trying to generate things quick. So plugging
Hmm.
things into ChatGPT for writing, plugging things in from pre-made Canva templates for social. All of those are amazing tools. And I also think that there's absolutely a way for you to DIY your marketing and for you to hire out. And that's your decision and up to your skill set and times, but you need to put some time into it. You can't just pull something that's pre-made on the internet and put it out there and expect it to come off trustworthy and professional and elevated. I always tell people that really elevated, nice branding helps enable you to raise your prices or to elevate your experience with whatever you're putting out for your customers too. They're going to kind of equate that with what you're worth. So, make sure you just take your time with it, and set aside a marketing day or set aside time for that in your schedule, because I think the biggest thing with small businesses is they're rushing through it. They haven't posted in a week. They're trying to put something out while they're in the carpool lane picking up their kids. I totally get it. I have a daughter. I'm a small business, but if you set aside some time and really go through your marketing, then I think it's going to be a lot more powerful.
Yeah, I think that that's really important. I mean, I love templates as much as the next person, but they're a jumping off point, as you're saying. They
Yes,
help you get
exactly.
started. They can give you a place to start. But you're right, too many people either do this or they're being encouraged, right? There's a lot of online gurus, so to speak, who are, very keen to get you to focus on using all, like you said, all the different templated things just so that you can post on social media in quantity, but when there's no quality there, you lose something. You look like everybody else.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I think something that I suggest and with my clients or with friends or anyone that I know in the business world is, it's if you can plan ahead on your social media or on your marketing and kind of build out like a theme or some sort of concept that you want to put out there and be a little bit more strategic. I encourage people maybe once a month, go to a coffee shop, don't check your email and just go through, start with those starting point templates, but then just take some time to kind of add in what could be special about this? What could make me stand out? What is that messaging that to my core is going to connect with people? If you take your time with it, but you do it in bulk, it's going to save you some time in the long run. So that's something I encourage people to, whether it's once a week, whether it's once a month, just, sit down and go through a big chunk of your marketing because then you can also think about how these posts work together and what sort of story you're building. And I just think that's kind of an easy takeaway or tip for people because a lot of my friends are trying to do it day of or trying to get on every day. And I'm like, just sit down and schedule ahead. It's going to help you a ton.
That's 100% correct. I think that's one of the things that either someone needs to tell you or you ultimately learn out of desperation
Mhm.
that it's just not viable if you have anything else in life going on to sit there and be posting on social media one by one every day. It is a
Mhm.
huge time suck. So you're right. Being able to chunk it and get it, get something done in advance and plan it out is essential.
Mhm.
Even doing that's not easy, right? Social media is a lot bigger
Oh yeah.
task than people realize, but before they get their hands in the clay.
Exactly. No, it is a ton of work. That's why some people are like, look, I'm just going to outsource it to you. Or whenever I do work with people and I know they want to DIY it, I try to give them the best tips possible. Just work ahead, plan ahead, especially because then you can get strategic with, seasonal campaigns and things like that. So you can start to build out how am I connecting with people with whatever time of year it is or whatever is relevant in life. And then if you get on and you do a post day of, it's more from the heart or it's more spur of the moment and that's totally fine too. It's all a balance, but let us tell you now so that you don't have to learn the hard way. Start scheduling it ahead. Think of your marketing ahead of time. It's going to save you so much in the long run.
Yeah, I think that's really the best because as you've mentioned, you have to be consistent. I mean, I think that's a key word that often gets lost in translation, so to speak, with marketing. People go into it.
Hmm.
I think if you're a big corporation, it's already a department, right? It's a department, it has a fixed budget, it's a whole different ball game.
Hmm.
But when you're a small to medium-sized business, oftentimes it's sort of, as you know, it's not necessarily a must, it becomes a maybe. It's almost like
Hmm.
something we do when we have time to do it, and it never really works. It needs to be, as you're saying, consistent. So you have to be able to build in those systems that enable you to be consistent.
We're going to take a quick break now, and then we'll be right back.
If you're a pet owner who wants real talk on training, behavior, and everyday life with animals, check out the Fresh Patch Podcast. Hosted by Drew and Gabe, we cover the wins, the challenges, and everything in between. So wherever you listen, search the Fresh Patch Podcast, where good pets get it.
Exactly. And it's one of the things that is so easy to fall off the map. Oh, I got super busy and I haven't posted on social in 2 months, but now I'm slowing down and nothing's lined up for me. That consistent schedule is going to kind of help you find a little bit more consistency in your sales process too, because it's so natural when you get in a busy season to stop marketing for yourself and stop promoting yourself, but then think about what's going to happen whenever your busy season ends. You're not going to have anything lined up and you're going to regret that you haven't been posting on social or you haven't been doing whatever sort of networking or promotion that you're doing. So I think those rhythms are so important. And that's something that a lot of people learn with time too. But again, like let us tell you and give you the advice now so you don't have to learn the hard way. That it'll help you so much if you stay consistent.
Absolutely. I mean, you don't realize it, like you say, until you experience it. You think everything's
Mhm.
going great, right? You're doing your social media, you're doing advertising, you're doing networking, sales calls, you got the whole thing moving. And then, like you say, you hit that busy patch and, something
Mhm.
comes up. Maybe it's not even a work thing, it's a personal thing, whatever happens, right? The train sort of jumps the tracks. and then you stop doing it, and it doesn't really matter in the near term, right? You
Yeah,
still have the
exactly.
momentum, and then you wonder why everything's just fallen off a cliff, and it's because you
Hmm.
stopped, and there's that lag. Do you know what I mean? And
Exactly.
yeah, until you've actually seen that happen to you a few times, you don't realize it that you absolutely that consistency is more important, right, than how fancy what you're doing is, right? A lot of people think I can't post something unless it looks like absolutely fabulous, right? Or I can't
Mhm.
run an ad until I've thought about it 100,000 times and reiterated it. But actually, I think what you're saying, and I agree with this, is that it's the consistency that actually is
Mhm.
what moves the train forward.
Yes, exactly. And you have to just trust the processes that you put in place. So if you do a good job with your branding and you build out some templates that are branded to you, that have your colors, your fonts, your logos, you can reuse those. You don't have to reinvent the wheel and do this big, crazy, trendy post every time. You've got that in place and it's consistent and it's branded to you. If you decide this is how many times I have to post a week. This is how many sales calls I have to make. This is how many networking events I need to go to. If you stick to that and you find that right formula for you, that consistency goes so far. I think people always want to kind of break the rules of their brand or of their marketing because there's a cool trend out there. And you don't need to go and do all these like funny random TikTok trends and all that stuff. You just need to consistently portray that messaging and whatever you need to put out there that your audience needs to hear. So it all comes back to you thinking, okay, beyond my services, beyond just like kind of typical, what do I offer? What matters? What does my audience need to hear? What's going to make them have that moment of like, oh, I need this. This was made for me. And is your branding and is your messaging just consistently saying that across the board?
Yeah, that's a really important point because oftentimes we get bored with our own message before
Hmm.
the target audience has even really digested it.
Exactly. Yeah. People, I mean, you will want to change your logo every season. You're going to want to change your colors because you're going to see something really cool and cute. And I mean, if you're a starter business, you probably will hit a point where you want to get like a professional brand but once you have that and it's set, leave it.
Mm.
Just because you've seen your brand color 10,000 times, someone new hasn't, and it's going to stand out to them. So you have to trust what you've built, do it right, put time into it in the beginning, and then just trust the process. So I think, we're always tempted with like the shiny new thing, but that consistency is really foundational and it's trustworthy too. It's what you become known for.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point when you say that that consistency builds trust, that
Mhm.
having that logo that people see time and time again, or that tagline, or all the different touch points in your brand, what you think is boring, right, is actually what's
Mhm.
building trust with your audience.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's why it's worked for huge companies for some people have had the same logo for 100 years,
Yeah.
and it's worked for them because it was done right. And then the longer you've got a good logo in place, the more it's going to do the work for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you talk about the fact that to get a website that really converts, it's more than just looking pretty. Can you explain a little bit about what you need to have to create that site that's actually going to convert for you?
Yeah, definitely. So I think, you always want everything to be aesthetic and beautiful and, clean. But really, the most important consideration with a website is the customer journey. So again, all of this is having empathy for your customer. Put yourself in their shoes. Why are they on your website? Where did they come from? And what information do they need? You want to make sure that they can clearly figure out where they need to go within a matter of seconds. You want to make sure if they land on your page and they don't know who you are, the first thing, the header in your website explains exactly who you are, why you're different, what you offer. Everything needs to be clear. And something I see a lot is people want to overcomplicate their websites. Keep it a clear call to action, keep it simple. You do not need to have 50 web pages most of the time, unless you're like a store or something. So just keep it kind of all about the customer journey. It all comes back to that. Put yourself in their shoes, ask a friend, ask a neighbor, if you were this person needing this, could you figure it out in a few seconds on my website?
I think that's a really great point, and you're absolutely right. We all tend to overcomplicate things because we're
Hmm.
looking at it from our point of view, right? There's a lot of ego in all of this, and I think you're making a
Hmm.
very important point in saying that you have to see it through the eyes of that customer, what they want, right? How
Hmm.
how can we get them to where they want to be on our website as fast as possible without making them jump through hoops?
Yeah, keep it. I mean, I think a lot of it comes from a good place, and I have so much to say, I have so much to tell
Yeah.
them. What if I mention this? What if I mention that? And I think it's just, reel back, decide what messaging is really important, use your brand, make sure that it's lining up consistently in a visual tone too, and just make sure that you've got a nice, clear next step. um, you know, think about the top three reasons why people would land on there and make sure you're providing that. I think that's the kind of the perfect plan.
Yeah, it's so important. Easy to understand conceptually, very difficult to do,
Oh,
right?
of
When
course.
it's your
Yeah.
product. That's, in a sense, you do
Hmm.
need outside eyes to be able to help you cut through all of that and get rid of all the stuff that you want to add in there. It's just, I know, but I really want to tell them about this, and we
Hmm.
can't not mention that. And you need someone to be able to look at it with less emotion, so to speak, and tell you, no, get rid of all that stuff. It's just distracting.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, all of this marketing, branding, web design, in a way, it's very emotional. Like I've had
Yes.
clients cry in meetings before, like, tears of joy. Like they're just passionate, but it's very emotional. And I think that's why it helps to have an outside opinion, an outside source, whether that is hiring out for help or that's using someone in your business circle or whatever it is. But to get someone else's eye on it because you're so in your head and it's so personal to who you are, what you're trying to portray, that you just need you need that perspective. It doesn't really matter what you like want to say or what you want in the grand scheme of what does your customer need. That's what's more important. So but it's emotional, it's passion, and it's hard to differentiate. It's definitely an easier said than done type of scenario.
Oh, absolutely. Well, Natalie, you've shared a lot of really great things with us, and I think there's probably people listening to this who would love to be able to reach out to you and ask you their own, specific questions about their business. Where can people find you?
Yeah, I would love that. Even if y'all just want a friend in the field or someone in marketing too. I always like to do virtual coffee chats, let people pick my brain. So I love meeting people. I'm a people person, but all of my socials, my website, everything's under Nat Marie Design. So you could do natmariedesign.com or get on any social platform and then go from there.
Oh, that's perfect. Well, I'm going to include the links in the show notes if you are listening to this as a podcast on one of the podcast channels. And if you are watching it on YouTube, then it will be in the description area. So you'll have the exact right links in order to reach out to Natalie. I hope you take advantage of it. I think, a coffee chat with Natalie just sounds like the perfect way to kickstart your marketing and, finally get things rolling, get serious about it. Well, thanks again, Nat, for joining us. It's really been a pleasure.
Yes, thank you so much. I've had so much fun.
Thanks for being with us here today on A Seat at the Table. If you'd like to see some of the other episodes, head on over to our podcast website at seat.fm. That's SEAT.fm. There's also a link here in the show notes. And if you're thinking that you'd like to be a guest on the show, you'll find information on how to apply there as well. Thanks again for joining us. I'm Jane Singer, and I will see you in the next episode.